I am not afraid of people with darkness within them. I'm only concerned about people that believe they have no darkness within them. All of us have an equal amount of darkness and light. Some of us are aware of the darkness, and some of us completely are avoidant of it. Those that are avoidant of it just push it into the world all around them, and then they become a hammer seeking the nail. We are dimensionally limited avatars. The only thing that's real here is what we feel. And every feeling that we avoided, that we repressed or suppressed, eventually has to be felt. Every word that we never spoke, that we felt the need to speak, needs to be spoken. The only doorway into higher scientific knowledge is through the doorway of spirituality. Everyone who ever brought forward new knowledge to Earth did it through spirituality. It's hidden so that it can be found. You hide it like you make an encryption so that it can be read and experienced by the person intended to get it. And we are that. Oh boy, I'm finding some new stuff right now. This is a trip.
What are you saying?
Hang on. So, have you ever seen the movie Prometheus?
No. Enlighten me.
So it's like an installment in the Alien series that probably, I guess if they could change the name now, it would be extraterrestrials now, because aliens are somewhat of a protected class. So in the film, which I never even knew this, there's a Stargate, and they get into this ancient spaceship, and the way that you activate the Stargate is by playing a flute.
Right.
So that's the encryption layer. It's like the two-factor authentication for opening the Stargate. And I think there's something with art imitating life.
Mm.
So we live in a matrix of mind. So therefore, all the things that show up in the world around us have meaning when we can actually look for that meaning. In fact, everything that happens to your life has meaning. It's only our belief system that it doesn't, that it turns out so that it doesn't. As soon as you ascribe meaning to something, or the belief that there is meaning behind something, then everything starts taking on a divine nature and divine aspect. So even what happened with me, I didn't even know, because I'd never seen the movie Prometheus until someone heard my story about the conch shell and everything, and they said, "Whoa, have you seen the movie Prometheus? It's kind of the same thing." And they're like, "Do you feel like you're living this out?" I'm like, "What's Prometheus?" I didn't even see the film. And then I went and watched the trailer for it, and I watched the part of it and the segments and the scenes that were associated with this. And I was like, what? Like, kind of blown away. It's kind of the concept that, you know, we have in Egypt something called the Jed pillar. And you have this concept of the Jedi. So the Jedi is the Jed, which is the spine. And then at the top of the spine is the I. Not the I as an I am, it's the I, but for the, you know, vision or perception or whatever you want to call it. So the Jedi Knights are basically these knights that would have been associated with the ancient Egyptian Jed pillar and attainment of this eye of providence, right? So, and then when you look at it and start digging deeper into this, you find out that there's a, what we would call future humans would be called Arcturians. And these Arcturians have this concept of the Shaddai, which is like their Jedi council. It's called the Shaddai. It's the same. And so you start realizing, where did George Lucas get this concept from? And then you start asking yourself the question, are thoughts really local to our brains? Or are we just picking up a radio receiver? You know, we're basically getting a hertz frequency that we're tapping into, and that our hearts are the tuning dial to capture that frequency, whether it's high frequency or low frequency. And so I think that this is why, you know, when I was in Mexico in 2019 in November, I had this vision when we were at Teotihuacan. It was our last day there, and it was lunch, and I went to Nassim Haramein, and I had this vision of us standing on a platform doing a ceremony, and I had no idea what it was or where we were. I just said, look, when we finish at Teotihuacan today, let's stay up at the top of the Pyramid of the Moon, and maybe we could do this ceremony because I feel like we're supposed to do some ceremony that's going to have some significance. And so I waited up there, and he already went down because I was doing like a FaceTime live or it was like a Facebook live, Instagram live. And he already went down. And so as I started walking down, because I thought, well, I guess we're not going to do this. Then I told him the ceremony I saw was with this whole group of people all around us. We were on a platform situated at the 4 cardinal directions. And there were myself and Nassim Haramein, the physicist, and then our 2 assistants. So my assistant and his assistant. And so I come down the pyramid, and this Toltec shaman that had been there with us, his name was Gorilla. That's actually his name. I got shadow banned on Instagram because I said his name Gorilla once, and it's like guerrilla warfare type thing. And I said his name on Instagram, and then not fact checkers, but like the hate police got all over it because they're like, that was a racist comment. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding. So basically, he said to me, he's like, look, before you go back to the buses, there's something I want to do, and our people want to do for you, and for you and Nassim both. And so he walked us, instead of going to the buses, we walked to this place called the Heart of the Feathered Serpent, which is right across on the Walk of the Dead from where the Temple of the Sun is, the Pyramid of the Sun. And he says, okay, Robert, I need you standing right here in this direction. Nassim, stand right here on this platform that was 4 feet high off the ground. And then everyone stood around. There were about 100 people around, including some of their tribe. And then he said, I need the 2 youngest women. And the 2 youngest women were my assistant and his assistant, Nassim's assistant. And so then I find myself on top of this platform in the 4 cardinal directions, just as I'd seen in my vision at lunch that day. And it was just before sunset. And someone captured an epic photograph of it. And I could probably find it and share it with you because it's such a moment, right? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't, and I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very germane. I don't get this question. I don't think I've gotten this question before. So, it's cool that I get to kind of respond to this one because I think it has deep significance, at least to me. So, here we were in Mexico. It was about a week before the first COVID patient was announced in Wuhan, China. And here it is.
Oh, no way. Check out the sun. Scunny Addy. Whoa.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
So you can see there's me in the red shirt. Gorilla's the guy with the white hair to my left, and then his son is the guy playing the flute to my right. These are the 2 assistants that we had, Andrea and Victoria. And then here's Nassim Haramein. And it was exactly as I'd seen. And in the process, he gave Nassim a mask, and he gave me the conch shell, the heart. The mask had a thunderbird painted on it, and the conch shell had a phoenix painted on it. And they were both carried by Gorilla for 40 years. So they'd not done this before.
Yeah, that's a long time to have a sacred artifact with yourself and then to gift it to another human being.
Yep. And so for Nassim, he did a prayer and said, to capture wisdom. And then he had these stones and he had everybody bless the stones to help Nassim to get, the wisdom necessary, I guess, for this. If I could find this picture. Here it is. So these are the stones right here. And there's my, conch shell. And then for me, it was quite different. He came to me and he started yelling at me, which was like literally screaming. Look at his face.
He's having a good go.
And and he's pointing at me straight in the eyes. And he's got this, incense and, the smoke all around me. I'm getting smudged all over the place. And he says, you receive the cosmic knowledge from the Great Spirit. And your job is to share it and to touch the hearts of people around the world. So he gave me the conch shell, and he kept saying, you are the one to do this. And he's screaming, you are the one, like this. And I was like embarrassed because, I've surrounded by all these people too. It was a weird feeling. And then he said that I have to play this flute at the sacred sites around the world. And so the first time I played it was in Egypt. A few months later, I went in February and March of 2020, right before COVID.
Hey there, Inspired Soul. Just a quick little update on today's episode. You'll notice that unfortunately there is some issues with the audio from my end. So given the nature of just how profound Robert is and how profound this particular episode turned out to be, in that he was discovering things in the episode, he was sharing things that he hasn't shared anywhere else in the world. We owed it to the world to release this episode. The audio is a little bit scratchy. We sincerely apologize in advance for not delivering on the quality that you've grown to love here at The Inspired Evolution. Thank you so much in advance for your understanding. As always, your blessings are not lost on us. Back to today's episode.
Because there's a bit of a vision that you had around that as well. So the first time you had a premonition, actually, you, just before COVID, you were told not to go. And then you kind of were like, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, no. In fact, that was the one time Nassim and I ever gotten into a disagreement, because I was president of the foundation, Resonance Foundation.
We've had Nassim on a couple of times on the podcast as well. He's lovely. So I just wanted to sort of pre-qualify.
Oh, yeah. No, he's very lovely. I mean, he's like a brother to me to this day. I love him to death. And I'd worked with him. I moved him out to California in late 2014, early 2015. And I invested in his company. We co-founded a company together, and loved Nassim. And I was honored when he asked me to be the president of the Resonance Foundation. So I went to, I said, look, I was going to take a group to Egypt on my own, and I'd already done it before once. And I said, look, I'll do it with Resonance, and that way all the proceeds will go to Resonance, right? Because I didn't really need the funds at the time. And so I said, I'll do it. And then right before we left, he was worried that we'd get locked into Egypt and that we'd all be stuck there if they closed the border, which could have very well happened. But then I called him up and I said, no, I got a memo from the Arcturians are telling me that the borders are going to close the day after we come home. And he's like, come on, dude, I need more than that.
I can understand his apprehension a little bit to that that particular line of reasoning.
But that's exactly how it did happen. Like literally the day after. It was crazy. And it would have been terrible to be stuck in Egypt, but I knew that there was something really important. I mean, I remember we went to the Bent Pyramid, and while we were there, I saw these bats on the ceiling, and everyone was like, oh, bats were like a symbol at the time of, carrying viruses and stuff. And so everyone knew, we were wearing masks on the way over to Egypt, right? And so we knew that it was going to be precarious, but everyone came on the trip and nobody wanted to miss it because it was an important activation that was part of the next stage of things that happened at that time. So, I've gone around, to different places, and I'm about to announce a trip. You're the first to hear it here. I've got this premonition. I have to go back to Peru, to Machu Picchu, to Ollantaytambo, to Sacsayhuaman. Last time I went there was in 2018. And so I'm going to basically go in later this year, and I'm going to take 144 people with me. And so I have this whole new series of trips to different ancient sites with 144 people, which is not a small group to manage through.
Yeah, that really isn't.
No.
When are you intending to go?
October. It's going to be October 25th through November 3rd, I think. Yeah. So for those that are interested, you can go on my website, robertedwardgrant.com, and you can sign up for the wait list. We got a lot of people, thousands of people on the wait list. So, but the reason why you want to be on the wait list is because as soon as we announce all the details of it, and then you can lock in your spot, then you can you'll get the notification right away, so that you're not disadvantaged.
Where did your fascination with the pyramids and Egypt begin, really? And how did you get such unprecedented access to the pyramids as well? Because I think that's a question that's on everybody's mind.
Yeah, I tried to just be really friendly and not combative, combative with people that were in the Egyptology world. I mean, which you can imagine with as much stuff as we've now come out with and said, this is what we think it is, et cetera, you can imagine that would, anger some people.
Yeah, because
right?
people have been
But I
visiting
think
for
it's all in the
thousands of
way
years,
you
but
do
you've
it.
been- Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's all in how you couch it. Yeah, they've been visiting for thousands of years. And it's just a very different story than the narrative that we've had, right? And the story continues to emerge more and more. So now people know when we go on trips, I'll make the announcement, what are we going to discover this time? And every time we have massive number of discoveries. I mean, it's kind of insane. And so I have a lot of Egyptian followers and a lot of Egyptology followers now. But then they can't really deny it because it's not conjecture. I can sit here and say, look, Metatron's cube is the geometric architectural plan for the Giza Plateau. And I've proven it in geometry. And I don't need a single measurement in order to make all three pyramids on the same blueprint. So that's kind of trippy and in perfect scale representation to each other too. I made a series of videos on YouTube called The Holy Grail of Geometry. And the Holy Grail of Geometry is taking you through the music and the geometry relationships of the pyramids and how the designers understood this. And they left it encrypted in living stone for us to find in its ratios and proportions, which is so beyond genius. It's kind of mind-boggling. And then, I discovered the Alpha Omega on the rim and the sarcophagus. And in the beginning, everyone thought, oh, surely this can't be true. How could no one have seen this? But no one did see it. And then, all of a sudden I see it and now everyone can see it. And I can show you that too, if you like. And basically that really, I think, shifted things because then from there, we started noticing the things on the walls. And it was at the same time we started finding and remembering the things that were encrypted in Leonardo da Vinci's paintings. The Last Supper.
That stuff blows me away. I actually can't even wrap my head around the Leonardo da Vinci stuff. The accuracy with which what the actual Robert?
Yeah, I mean, what the actual, and it's funny because we first discovered a bull and a cow on the north wall in the King's Chamber. And the bull is the Apis bull and the cow is the Hathor. So it was fitting that it was the next thing we discovered because not only could you see it quite prominently, but it was fitting in particular because the alpha is the representation. Alpha in Phoenician and Greek, and I believe Arcturian before that, is actually Aleph. Aleph, which is, Aleph means cow or bull. So Alpha Bet is the house of the bull. And the house of the bull would be a reference because the Apis bull is a reference to Osiris. And the Great Pyramid, even by many in the Egyptology ranks, is believed to be the house of the Apis bull or house of Osiris. So alphabet, it's hidden in plain sight. The word alphabet in our, original numbering system and the original, because remember, Greek didn't have numbers. They just used letters. So it was all like gematria. Alpha was 1. Beta was 2, right? Gamma was 3. So effectively, the word alphabet that we all learn in kindergarten or before is actually a reference to the Great Pyramid.
Which is pretty true because also as language, like each of those blocks of language also form how we think as we evolve into our lives as well, right? So it's coding us,
and
our language.
bet means house. Beta just means house. Aleph or alpha is bull or ox. Beta is house. So, and C, which is gamma in Greek, is camel. Gimel. Right? So each of these, what we think of as the, Phoenician letters, that they're not pictographic, they actually are, right? Because Aleph comes from, the reason why it relates to the alpha and the bull is because it's the same shape as the Taurus constellation. It was just depicted on its side, the way we see it in the sky. And then we flipped it right side up. So all of this stuff, now is starting to become visible and easy to be seen by lots of people. I'll show you this right here. So I remembered it. That's how I saw it in the first place. And I would have never been able to see it had it not been that I remembered it. So this is the rim of the sarcophagus right here. And you could see the alpha and the omega. Right? What a trip. So you see this right here?
Yeah, I do.
Yep. And here's the omega. And it's not just graffiti because it's 5.605 inches across exactly, which is the square root of pi times 10. And the room has a perimeter value of pi times 10 meters.
So it's exactly positioned.
Yeah, across inches and meters. So they used all measurement systems to create the pyramid. So this is the Great Pyramid, King's Chamber right here.
Oh, can you scroll up just a little bit, Robert?
Can you see it?
Yeah, perfectly.
So you have to place the light on the side, otherwise you'll never see it. If you put light straight on it, you can't see it. See, just like that. See how it disappeared?
Yeah. That is fascinating.
And the Last Supper, where Jesus and Mary Magdalene are sitting across. Oh boy, I'm finding some new stuff right now. This is a trip.
What are you saying?
Hang on. Well, first of all, there's a compass right here, which I knew about already on the right side. You see my cursor? See, there's a circle right here with two arms of the compass coming down.
Yep.
It's like where you would have an architect's signature, right? Oh. It's just like, even today we do this type of thing with architects. So you got like the architect with an A over a circle, and then there's like degree markings. And I've analyzed this one very closely. And every time I see this, I see, literally, I'm seeing more and more things. And there's a flower of life on the back side right underneath this as well, where the feet are across that wall. It's a full flower of life. But I'm seeing something else on this left side here that I have not seen before or noticed. See, the thing with consciousness is, I walked in there the first time, I didn't see any of this stuff off the bat. Then as I started to raise my consciousness level, because the pyramid's basically a reflection of that consciousness, as I started raising my consciousness level, I could start to see things a lot more clearly. So when I walk in the Great Pyramid now and I look at the walls, I see something totally different. And it's like color. It's vivid. And there are petroglyphs all over the walls.
Because that was going to be one of the
There's
things
something here as well.
Fascinated me deeply about what you said as well. A couple of things, like Dolores Cannon obviously saying someone will go in and decode the pyramids at some point, and they will have the ability to see. And then also your reference to obviously being deeply baked in geometry and patterns. You said the more we raise our consciousness, the greater we can actually see and identify these patterns. And geometry, which is, actually when I pause to reflect on that, I imagine as you raise your level of consciousness, you get more and more meta in some ways, and you can actually see the divine order in all the chaos as well in certain ways. Yeah, so there's many questions in there that rise up for me in terms of using geometry and pattern identification as a bit of a sort of frog in the ecosystem, sort of be able to determine how your consciousness is evolving and growing. But also, it's really fascinating that you're actually having this experience of going into the pyramids and going, oh, wow, like I've evolved and now I can see a little bit more. And also alludes to potentially the fact that people probably haven't seen some of this stuff because we weren't ready to see this stuff. And now things are starting to be like seen. This is all very trippy to grasp.
Alrighty, guys, hopefully you're loving this conversation with Dr. Robert Edward Grant. I know I am, and there is so much that he's about to share in this episode that he's never shared anywhere ever before. If you're loving these podcasts here at The Inspired Evolution, please do me a massive favor and hit subscribe to the channel. At the moment, 95% of you that are tuning into this channel aren't actually subscribed. You are watching a second or a third video, and you're not subscribed to the channel. So if you can basically help me out, it'd help so much with everything we're trying to do with spreading positivity, spreading the power of wisdom around the world. It just, helps with everything we're doing here. Please take a moment to hit subscribe. And without too much further ado, back to today's episode.
It is because, I think if you look at the last Piscean age, or what I call the Piscean, right? The last Piscean age, and I'm going to share some things with you that I've not talked about or shared with anyone. Some of it I only got in the last 24 hours. So very, very new. And so basically one of the things about the last era, which has been the Piscean, has been that we have this separation between science and spirituality. And if you think about the two fish tied together with a rope going opposite directions, right? You could say that's science and spirituality. Okay. And so what that means is we have a lot of information, which then inevitably pushes us down this path of not ascribing meaning, because those two worlds have to be entirely separated. But nothing is truly separate. It's only our perception that makes it so. So when you contemplate this notion that spirituality and science might actually be connected, that's when you can start to see patterns, which patterns inform meaning behind things like math and physics. So when we learn math without meaning, it's just information. It's very banal. But when we learn math with meaning, especially philosophical and spiritual meaning, and actually, if you look at the ancient sense of mathematics, it was literally born through the pursuit of applied philosophy. Mathematics is applied philosophy. And applied mathematics is geometry, and applied geometry is physics, and applied physics is chemistry, and applied chemistry is biology, and applied biology is psychology, and applied psychology is sociology, and applied sociology is philosophy, and applied philosophy is back to mathematics. You see how it's all connected? Absolutely. So we've separated it out, so then it makes it difficult to learn vast amounts of impersonal data and information. But when you start to realize that math is the language of the creator, source creator, and it's how it can communicate with us in our conscious minds, then it changes everything. People that hated math in junior high school and high school now fall in love with it. Because now they finally experience math with meaning, and the stuff that they couldn't understand because it was too intangible for them and esoteric and maybe even too abstract, now becomes very solidified. It's concretized. And now they have it in a way, they understand it because it has spiritual and experiential significance to them. So to me, like the last era, because of this separation of the fish, being the spiritual and the scientific, I think you could say that during this last period of time, we've all been kind of learning everything without meaning. And so therefore, what did we most value in the schooling experience? Well, we valued rote memorization. Because after all, you don't need to understand the stuff behind it. You just have to do well enough to do well on the test. And if you're going to take the test of it and you have it memorized at least, then that's going to get you by. And you should be in school for as long as possible, because then that in our capitalistic society will allow you to command the most wage per hour, because then you're more scarce. And capitalism is based fundamentally on scarcity. And it might be a contrived scarcity like water, or it might be a contrived scarcity like air. And if you have a lot of water, you could contrive it further and say, you know what? Water is the most abundant resource on the planet, but actually it's not abundant in its clean form. So clean water is what's missing from Earth. And so therefore, I'm going to put it in a bottle and sell it to you for $20. And it's kind of like, I'm going to bottle prana and sell it to you. Wait, I think that's what religion does. Organized religion. So you've got these different parts of society. We're not taught to think. We're not taught to recognize our own patterns and to come to know these things on our own. Rather, we're taught to rote memorize it. So pattern recognition is just a new way of learning that allows you to be sovereign. We even have words we vilify pattern recognition. We call it words like pareidolia, which is like, seeing a pattern when there's no pattern there. No, you assume there's no pattern there because you don't want to see a pattern. So academia constantly is trying to avoid patterns because that might bring up the notion of a creator. You see what I mean? So the way that we're going to learn going forward is through pattern recognition, seeing the patterns in our lives, seeing the patterns of the meaning all around us. So then that's how the universe changes in our experience, from a universe of cold, meaningless, heartless, capitalism. And I'm not against capitalism, but I'm against, I'm not for heartless capitalism or, this kind of notion of math without meaning or life without meaning. Because that's exactly what science also wants, a life without meaning. You're insignificant. You mean nothing. The universe doesn't give two shits about you. Not even one shit. Not even a quarter shit. So this is where the world has gotten into this mode to force down our throats in a way. And it's what we chose because we are the captain of our soul. We are the master of our fate. We are the actor, the director, the playwright, the producer. We're all of it. And our life is actually a stage play. And we live in this world of a U-inverse where everything we judge is what we attract until we no longer judge everything we attracted. And we learn through opposites. So if I'm here to learn unconditional love, then I have to experience a lifetime of repetitive experiences of conditional love. Until I no longer judge conditional love, I haven't fully understood the concept of unconditionality of love. It's through experiencing the pain that I can know what pleasure is. And an eye can't see itself without the aid of a mirror. Fire can't burn itself. A tooth can't bite itself. Consciousness has to separate itself into the many simply for the joy of being able to perceive itself through our unique eyes of perception. And then the universe becomes more and more wise as it accumulates all this data like an AI of how to experience empathy for every possible circumstance. So then the universe has deep meaning. And so what I do is I spend my time trying to find patterns. And every time I look for patterns, they exist. They definitely exist. There's literally no doubt about it. And it's a trip, man, because once you realize this, then everything starts to show up as synchronicity. And that's when life starts to become really beautiful. So I'll give you an example of one thing. So I just did this analysis on Sunday, which was on the Philosopher's Stone of Alchemy, which is the nature of the overlapping triangle, square, and circle, which is also the Tao. So the square is the T, the A is the triangle, and the O is the circle, right? The middle way. So those are the three most basic forms, right? And actually, it's basically giving you the square has 4 sides, the triangle has 3 sides, and the circle is 1. So it's also another way to depict this could be 3, 1, 4. Pi, full circle. Right? So if I share this, what I was doing here was I wanted to look to see, what relationships there might be if I just took triangles and squares, right? And this was fascinating because I had already posited that there were 3 new numbers that were missing in math. And I know that sounds weird, but when you realize that math and music, when you realize that math and music are just the opposite conditions, one to another, then you start to realize as well that there's a whole other aspect of mathematics that we're missing. And so if I show you this on my website, hopefully you're seeing my website here.
Yep, I am.
You are? Okay, good. So on my website, there's a thing here called the discovery of base 12 integers are hidden within the base 10. Okay. So if we start with a line of 1, right, then you could have the note A. That's Aleph also, the bull. 2 is Bet. It's like a house, right? So you've got a triangle now that would have 2 sides. But it's not entirely closed yet until we put the third side on it. Even though the third side is predetermined, you could say that the 2 implies the 3 already. It could be a compression, right? You only have to put 2 lines because it could be no other line. You have to attach these points right here. And as soon as you do, then there's a circle that goes around it. So this would be Aleph, right? And then A sharp or B flat. And then B as a musical note. Now, each one of the sides of this triangle is 1. But what about this circle that inevitably forms around this closed polygon? And what's the length of that circle? Well, the length of that circle turns out to be 3.66. And it's like an irrational number. The same thing happens here when we get past the hexagram and you have 2 overlapping circles that at the point of their overlap, you don't include, and then the length of the circumference on the outer circumference of these 2 circles comes out to 6.33. And then by the same token, same happens with this last number, and I called these Phio, Sieve, and Eno. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, Phio, 4, 5, 6, Sieve, 7, 8, 9, Eno. And Eno is just 1 backwards. So it's now representing the divine aspect of how the circles overlap each other to create these geometric forms. And in this case, Eno is creating the triqueta. So what does this have to do with the price of tea in China, Robert? Well, in music, we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you depict it in this way, and you realize that 1 is the mirror, it's not actually 0. We always think of 0 as a mirror, but 1 is the actual mirror between light and darkness. So, and you have the golden ratio. The golden ratio is 1.618, and its reciprocal is 0.618. The 1 is going back and forth, right? On one side of the mirror, it's got the 1. On the other side, it doesn't. So it's the number that has that characteristic. The square root of 10 also has that characteristic. So the square root of 10 taken to the power of -1 equals the reciprocal of the square root of 10, which is the exact same number, 316227766. So what happens here is you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And in music, we don't only have, like 1 going to 2, and then 2 doubling to 4, and then 4 doubling to 8 in the octaves. You also have thirds in music. So the musical scale has to be able to be split into thirds. So the yellow circles that you see right here. And that's fundamental to forming all the other notes in the scale. So what it implies then is that exactly the position of those other notes is precisely where we could see this relationship to the potential for new numbers.
Numbers belong.
That sit in these categories. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I believe this is why we actually have 365 days in a year. The 366 is just the beginning of the next cycle. It'd be like 12 ending a clock, right? And then the clock starting over again. So all of this becomes, more about pattern. So now if I go back to look at the Tao, what do I find? Is there some relationship that might be hidden within this, right? Where we can see that there might be a relationship to these new numbers. And as you can see here, starting with this circle, right, of like, this is 0.125, the square that goes around this circle right here. So obviously this is like a doubling math number. So that's 1/8 as well. So then this is 1/4, the 0.25. And you'll see that every other one is starting to move out. And it's always, all I've done here is I've taken triangles and squares and then inscribed squares and circles within and without of them. That's it. And just gone all the way out. And so what patterns can I see? Well, you got the 0.125, which doubles to 0.25, right? And then eventually, that must be this one right here. This is going to be 0.5, right? And then it becomes 1 right here. I'm sorry. This one's 0.5. And then look, one of these lines is one of the new numbers. 0.366, which is interesting. It's like, oh, okay. Why is that showing up as an emergent form? Well, because it's directly related to this same geometry, right? Which is, if I looked at this geometry in this form like this, do you see this? Where it's got like this, I'm moving my cursor around right now. I want to make sure you're still tracking. So if I take a triangle with pi on all three sides, strangely, the height becomes the Euler number. So we've got a geometric relationship between Euler and pi. Euler is the thing that manages wave expansion and compound interest. And not only that, but the circle that inscribes within that isosceles triangle is the omega length, 0.56714. And then the angles here, right? And here, this becomes alpha squared. And then this position, the length of this line of the square x-ascribed around the circle, that's x-ascribed around this triangle that's equilateral, gives you one of the new numbers. This is Phio. And the angle of this angle right here is Steve. So you actually have in this showing us the relationship between Euler, pi, omega, alpha, pi over 6, and then the length of this line is the pyramid slope angle. So it's just inherent. And then the inscribed radius of this circle right here is the gamma Euler-Mascheroni number. You see what I mean? Nobody thought to look at this to say, wait, this is a pattern. And then if I extend this further, where that circle was pi, right here, and I keep going to the inner and create a Metatron's cube, the inner circle ends up becoming a diameter of square root of 3 minus 1. And then its side lengths become, this is sieve, and this is Phio. It's just inherent to the way numbers work. And then the outer x-ascribed circle to the square that goes around this circle is the golden number, 16.18. So all of the constants are actually interrelated to one another, and nobody knew it. And so you could find them all here. So as we scroll out, you'll see these values. right? So you've got 0.125, 0.25, 0.5, and then 1, and then 2 comes out here, right? It keeps going out, and 4 is over here. So this is 4, this line. And it will just continue out like that. So this becomes 8 right here. You see the pattern? And this is a logarithmic. That's why it looks like you're going into a tunnel, right? Because it's logarithmic.
Portal. Tunnel portal. Yeah.
Exactly. And just by doing the same pattern, now look at this. This circle right here has a circumference of pi. What a trip. Sorry, this is the circumference down here. So this becomes the circumference of rather this one. This becomes the circumference of pi right here. This blackened circle I just selected. That becomes circumference of pi. And then I have the area of pi in this larger circle. And they're all showing up. Which is like, wait, so that means this triangle, square, and circle relationship is representing all of the perimeter equal values and area equal values. Even though they're of different scale, they show up in the same pattern. And this goes all the way out infinitely. So then this right here is 2 pi. And of course, because it's doubling, then this is 4 pi. Down here on the bottom right. Right? And it just keeps going all the way out. So then you start realizing that each one of these is giving me some square root value. So the triangles, so we've got pi relationships for both the area and the circumference values of the circles. And then now the length of each of the triangle bases, you might not recognize these numbers, but 1.732 is the square root of 3. So this line is the square root of 3. This line is the square root of 6. This line is the square root of 12, 3.464. And then it goes all the way out. So then this becomes the square root of 24. This one that I just highlighted. And then this goes to the square root of 48. And then this becomes the square root of 96. You see the pattern?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's like just doubling math all the way out, and it's supposed to be logarithmic. And it is logarithmic. So it's this relationship of perimeter and the circumference and the equality between the area values, both for triangles and squares as well, and the triangles and their perimeter values and areas. So it's incredibly beautiful when you start to realize that there is a pattern for all of it. And that pattern is right in front of our eyes. And until you look at it for the pattern, you'll never find the pattern. So then you'll never know the divine aspect of this, which is to choose the middle way. That all of these things are not, in fact, disparate and the separation between spirituality and science, but actually what we look at one value, it's just a different representation. It can be depicted as a perimeter, or it can be depicted as an area of a triangle, a square, or a circle. And it's all represented there. So you're just seeing the different viewpoints and perspectives. And what geometry does is it uplifts our consciousness and acts as this QR code to wake us up, to remember who we are, and to start seeing this divine encryption that we ourselves built and left behind. So the Philosopher's Stone portal is embedding every integer in the perimeter, area, and circumferential values within its exact geometry. This knowledge, I believe, is a gateway to higher dimensional experience in time perception. And you don't need to understand all the numbers here if you don't. That's okay. Just by looking at this and watching this go in and out, you're picking it up by osmosis. Literally, it's becoming like a QR code for your subconscious mind.
Hey there, guys. Quick question for you at this particular juncture. Just really interested to feel into your ability to pattern recognize and just how you feel like your journey of elevating consciousness is going. I think it's really interesting what Robert's saying here about as we start to evolve our consciousness, we start to see higher and higher levels of pattern recognition in and around the collective, and it's a sign of enlightenment. I think this is really profound. I'd love to hear from you what your thoughts are in the comment section below on this. Back to the episode.
The elegance of the fact that you can do so much math with just symbols then and logos and not have to. I'm almost seeing like when you're pointed at the divine truth, or like the numbers still are behind the scenes, but these pure numbers, pure symbols can actually replace what we're clumsily trying to do when we're sort of aiming and just doing basic math, and we're trying to actually sub in numbers when we're working with ratios and geometry, which is all profound. But then when you start to see the patterns built out like this and you just lose numbers and you just start having in all these symbols instead of numbers because they are all related to each other, that starts to get really slippery and really profound in terms of, yeah, like you said, it opens up something in your mind in terms of this is the middle way.
Yeah, you know, if you talk to mathematicians, they would tell you, other than pi divided by 12, right, which, you know, comes out to be 0.261799, which is very close to the golden ratio number, right? So the golden ratio squared is 2.61803398887. So the golden ratio is the only number that you square it, and it's the same as, so phi squared is equal to phi plus 1.
Right.
Right? So this is a unique characteristic, but what I'm going to show you here is actually that this relationship is fundamental, and nobody knows this.
The geometry of the Tao.
So you'll see that I showed you the way that this is built up, that you've got pi as a circumference in here, you've got pi as an area value and circumference, right? That's basically showing up, right? Which, you know, this is half pi right here, 1.5707. And then you've got the square root of 3 showing up in this also, because all the triangles are giving us square root values. So it's like a different language that's playing out for us, right? So when you look at the pi value here as a circumference, and the area was also showing up as, you know, pi down here, which is, here's circumference of pi, and then where'd the area go? It was area, maybe it's out here further. Circumference of pi is here, so that's the same as that got duplicated. And there was another one I just showed you, was area of pi, right? And so I'm having a hard time seeing it right now. Maybe it's out here, but oh, here it is, area of pi right here. Yeah, here it is. So this is the area of pi. So this is the circle with circumference of pi, and this is the circle with area of pi, right? So they're both showing up. Well, if I continue this process all the way out, look what shows up. Circumference of phi square, phi. 161803398874989. It's just continuing the same pattern out. And it's perfect. That's exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 digits accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
For the golden ratio. So it means that the golden ratio is just inherent
everywhere
to pi.
Yeah.
Pi and the golden ratio are part of the same matrix of numbers that's just depicted like this. And you wouldn't.
Dance, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's divine. You can't look at this and say, this was all like, you know, okay, I'm wearing an old watch right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was made in 1942.
Right.
And I used to collect watches. I don't really collect them so much anymore, but this is an old watch from 1942. It was a pilot's watch. It's a Breitling. And imagine that, you know, this watch is like 80 years old or something, right? So if I took this watch apart and I put it all in a brown paper bag and then shook up that brown paper bag, what are the odds that it's going to end up all put back together as a watch again?
Yeah, it's an impossibility in many ways.
And yet what you're looking at is the mathematical representation of that. So it absolutely, inevitably implies a source creator, a designer. It's a mathematical, to me, and people that don't want to see it will not see it just because they don't want to see it. We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So, but to me, it's an absolute proof, along with 5 or 6 other points that prove the existence of a source creator and an architect. And the architect is you.
Because then we also tend to land in this sharing of yours where there is also no longer any, there's no quinky-dinks, there's no coincidentality, there's no, so it's all, because I remember actually this was a realization I had from one of my first sacred initiations, let's call it that, was the whole concept of every single moment, everything is, there's no coincidence. Like the whole concept of coincidence just evaporated out of my being in this initiation, touch wood. And it was quite overwhelming. And this was one of the questions I was hoping to ask you today. I don't want to derail you from the conversation on the divine.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to tuck this in there.
No, go ahead.
Which is actually, because for a lot of people, when I say that, it meddles. And I think we're on this, at this particular juncture in the conversation, where it sort of meddles with their sensibilities, where it's like absolutely everything is orchestrated perfectly. Like you said, the inverse of the you of our experience, right? Everything is happening at all times, generated from deep within. And then someone will be like, oh, but I flick on the news and I hear these wars going on the other side of the world, and I can't assume responsibility for that. And at the same time, though, well, very potentially, yes, right? And it becomes so slippery for the average person's mind to sort of tuck into that awareness when it's like actually everything that's happening on a macro scale is happening within your micro scale. So, that hashtag wage piece of like do the actual work inside and you will see it outside becomes very present. But as we're seeing, like the brown paper bag you've described, which is like the odds of everything coming back together the way that it actually has, man, it's empowering whilst also being quite overwhelming at first glance.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, yeah. What this is telling me, like just looking at this pattern, is that quite possibly every math constant that exists is just on this grid.
The divine interplay.
And how many math constants do we even know? Maybe we could reckon our level of intelligence as a species by how many math constants we know. If math constants are the verbs of our language, this etymology of number, then for us to be able to be proficient in speaking God's language, do we simply have to learn more verbs of action? And to me, that's kind of what we're talking about. We are dimensionally limited avatars. We would never play a game and create a game for ourselves where we were omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Never. We would only ever play a game because it would be no fun if I was omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, and we're playing poker. I'd be like, I know the hand you're going to be dealt. I know how you're going to respond to that hand.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that old Alan Watts, the dream within a dream. You start dreaming a little bit, you play this game with yourself and you kind of go, hey, I'm going to dream a dream and I can choose whatever dream I want. And you dream, oh yeah, like, I had that girl and I had this beautiful life with her. And then you get to dream another dream and, you can dream whatever you want and you get a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more ambitious. And you keep fast forwarding this, put it to the power of something. And then you get to the point where it's like, you build up some courage every time. Actually, I would love to dream the dream, not knowing that I'm dreaming. And then what do you dream? and then Alan Watts goes, wake up. So, classic Alan Watts.
Yeah, totally. Like, wait a minute. What level of dream am I in? That's like the Nick Bostrom thing, who's a simulation theory guy. I mean, I'm having lunch on Thursday with the cognitive neuroscientist Donald Hoffman, right? Who's a well-known. I've done podcasts with him. He's done tons of podcasts on big platforms. He's probably the world's expert on the mathematical mapping of human awareness. Mm-hmm. And we became friends, and so we're having lunch with a local guy here who it happens to be on my birthday, and a local guy who is really into consciousness. This local guy is very much into consciousness, and then I also invited Clee Irwin to come. It was their invitation, but I asked if Clee could come also. And Clee is the founder of Quantum Gravity Institute. Oh. And what's happening now is that physics is now starting finally to converge around this notion of simulation hypothesis.
Yeah. Tell me more about that, because it's interesting. Previously I've heard you say that our emotions are filling and expanding into what consciousness is expanding, the universe is expanding our Akashic records. And as we're starting to see even the geometry that you're putting forward, the odds of that just being happenstance near impossible, right? And so, the whole concept of, well, two parts to that question, like bring us into the simulation, but then also the minute we start using the word simulation, I know for a lot of people it just starts to feel empty and void of meaning, and it starts to end up feeling very hollow, when really it doesn't need to, right? Because actually this is all filling an experience. Sorry, I'm pre-programming your answer, but I'd love to.
Yeah, no, but that's the paradox of it all. That's the best paradox of it all. Think about it. It's like, because the only thing that's real in this simulation of mind is what we feel. So the only person you're cheating is you. If you think that everything's devoid of emotion and I don't need to feel anything, the whole point of you being here is to learn empathy. And so you've missed the point entirely. That means you got to come back and do this again, right? Because you didn't transcend to understand. Look, I got a thumbs up from the AI. It's like, right on, you got to come back and do this again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, you got to come back and do it again.
Half a thumb. It's like, great job, but I'm going to come back again.
Exactly.
Half a thumb.
Yeah. There we got it again. There you go.
Hey, your Inspired Tribe. I want to take a quick sec. I wanted to share something today with you that is really dear to my heart, and it's actually what keeps the entire ecosystem around the Inspired Evolution thriving, my one-on-one coaching. So it's basically coaching that helps you live a spiritually aligned life. I coach people from all different types of walks of life. These people are leaders and they're looking to have an incredible spiritual impact in the lives that they're leading for themselves, and then also lead in alignment to their values. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a few people that have also transformed through my coaching, and here's what they have to say.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing.
Then my corporate banking job wasn't really doing it.
You feel like you're not making progress towards your goals.
And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate because you won't be disappointed.
As you guys can see, there's a lot of people all over the world from all these different corners experiencing incredible transformations. I don't think, if I can say humbly myself, that there is anything quite like this somewhere else online. Most people that, have channels that, grow and grow and grow don't really focus on one-to-one offerings. I have just found that it is the most profound space where you can bring yourself in a private container and really just share what's going on for yourself. And if you want to book in for that call with me, touch base, it's www.amrit.coach/life. That's www.amrit.coach/LIFE. There is a link in the show notes below to book in that call. And yeah, if you want to take your journey further, if you want to dive in deeper, and you really want to live a spiritually aligned life, if it's for you, please do check it out. And without too much further ado, once again, for your spirit, for yourself, today's podcast.
So the point that I'm making is that if you think that now it's nothing matters because it's all a simulation, then you've literally missed the point of life. You have to, the only thing that's real here is what we feel. And every feeling that we avoided, that we repressed or suppressed, eventually has to be felt. Every word that we never spoke, that we felt the need to speak, needs to be spoken. We're here to have the authentic experience because it doesn't matter what the stimulus is. Everyone is going to have a different reaction to the same stimulus. Because everyone is unique. They've got their own conditioning biases. Again, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So therefore, the most important thing for us is to realize that we're here to feel and experience. And the only thing we do by avoiding it is just prolong the learning. And we'll have to experience the same experiences over and over and over again until we finally learn it. And the way we learn it is by getting the completion of understanding and accepting the opposite of what we thought we wanted to learn.
Well, that's also very present in, I'm back to the pyramids and their reflection of Orion, and Orion harboring the hero's journey. And what you're referring to in the hero's journey, the opposite is so true. It's that stoic wisdom of the obstacle is the way. Often that thing that you're resisting is persisting, and it's not until you face that dragon that you learn the lessons you meant to.
No, you nailed it. That's exactly right. It's like we don't realize it, that we attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attract. So the things that we resist are the things that will be most persistent to us. So if you keep experiencing wars, murdering of babies, right? You have to look within. Every opportunity that we have to experience a trigger where we elicit some reaction that seems unmeasured is where we know we can put our attention and acceptance to. Because until we finally learn, like for me, like as I've gotten closer and closer to really being able to live this notion of non-judgment, because it's a balancing thing. It really is. As I've gotten closer and closer to that, I used to think that the opposite or antonym of the word love was hate. I used to think that the antonym, potentially if it's not hate for love, might be fear. Now I realized it's judgment. Because love perceives no condition. True love perceives no condition, and judgment is founded on condition. So in order for us to learn, to really experience unconditional love, to truly love, we have to learn to accept judgment. When we finally no longer judge, the concept of judgment is when we finally learned how to love unconditionally.
I'm going to jump in there really quickly because I've also done the thing. I was really hoping we would have this conversation today or emerge at some point, because I'm that guy that's going, yeah, I don't judge, but I've got discernment. And you call me the total bluff on that shit. Can you please unpack that?
It's that temptation. It's like, no, I don't judge, mate. I don't judge. No, but I got discernment, mate. Discernment, that's different, No, it's fucking not. Just saying. I mean...
Sorry, I'm laughing because there's a whole body of work left for me to unpack in there. Yeah.
No, look, and I'm just like all of us. No one here on earth is any better. This is hard for people to hear when I say it. I don't believe anyone on earth is better than anyone else. In other words, there aren't people that are born with more darkness quotient than others. So you could think of your kundalini, your spine, as like a little meter. You ever gone to like amusement park and they have the thing where you have the hammer and you hit the bell,
yeah.
like a farmer's market type thing? Yep. Yeah, like ring the bell. So think about that as proportion of judgment versus love. And the top of it would be all love.
Unconditional love.
See, I got another thumbs up. The top is all love. We're like we may not be getting more conscious, but the freaking AI is, right? I mean, it's like.
It's picking up all of it.
It's picking up all of it, bro. It's like, you haven't even got a thumbs up yet. You got to get one. So this is the top of love. And then this would be all judgment down at the base, at the root. So as we raise our Kundalini life force up our spine, it's literally where it achieves its ascension towards. We get into the heart. That's really that we finally crested where we have more love than judgment. That's why it's the heart. Because I don't believe we're here to learn more judgment. I believe we're here to learn more love. I believe we're here to learn how to love and how to be loved.
Would you think that
we don't need a world full of more fucking judges?
Do you think that's given where we are right now in time? And I'm conscious of using the word time in this particular conversation because you've got it moving forwards and backwards in your mind. But I imagine because of the Leela, the play, in the yugs that we're in, we go through that interesting phase where we become more individuated. So, this experience of oneness can start to really see itself in many of its facets. And then we start to come back to realizing oneself as one whole. Is there a point where greater levels of judgment are in service to that process, and then now we've sort of flipped into a place where more love is in service to that process? Is that just depending on where we're at with relationship to time and the experience that the one is having with itself, different proportions of judgment and love become necessary to that realization?
Yeah, I do. And I think that is exactly, so as you go from this judgment to love, the place where you start to experience and go beyond duality is the throat, right? So the heart, you see what I mean? It's like the percentage, because this is the fourth, right? So you got the root, the sacral, the solar. So there's three. And then you've got the heart, the throat, the pineal, pituitary,
and you've
the crown,
into the majority.
Yeah. You got three. So the point where you've crossed over is the point where you start to choose love over judgment. In other words, I'm going to choose love because I believe that the experience and the expression of my love for the world and for all that is, even that which I may have judged, is more important and supersedes my desire for one objective truth. I don't need to be right. I can choose love instead of being right. So that's probably the most important thing I could ever say to anybody about the importance of maintaining beautiful relationships. We all feel this deep desire to be right. And how many relationships that we royally fucked up because we wanted to be right? When actually there's no such thing as being right because it's all subjective. I used to think that I collected facts in life, and now I realize that I didn't collect facts. I collected facets of a larger truth. And the only way I could come to this larger truth is to capture as many different subjective perspectives, and the number of those permutations could very well be infinite, very, very likely is. So then if I wanted to really understand the nature of some concept, some philosophical or metaphysical concept, the only way I could do it is to divide myself into many fragments of consciousness so that I could perceive it with different eyes of perception, which eyes will never be created again, and it will have never existed in the past. Because no one's ever had my parentage, my experiential bias, my conditioning bias, all the things that I've experienced in life that lead me to see the world as it is. We don't see it as we are. We don't see it as it is. We see it as we are. It's a reflection of me that I'm seeing out there. So anytime that I'm getting like triggered by something in the outer world, it's something that needs to be integrated within me.
Mm. And that can be a massive pill to swallow.
And that's a massive pill to swallow because we all get so used to being right, damn it. And people will die on their deathbeds and be like, I was fucking right. Does it really matter? Does it really matter at the end of the day? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I can tell you this, the people that I've known that have been on their deathbeds, if they had any regrets, it was that they didn't reconcile that relationship because they broke up over a stupid thing. And they carried that low frequency all the way into death. And to me, that's just, we can transcend it. So as we go about this meter, right? And it's about 1 meter probably. It's about 3.28 feet, right? 3.281 feet is 1 meter. So yeah, that's about the length of our spine. So this meter of judgment and love, we get to the throat chakra, and what happens? That's when we finally transcend duality, because now we are 5/7, right? Instead of 4/7.
The scales are tipping.
The scales are tipping. Once we get to 5/7, that's the 5th dimension. And then we start to perceive time differently.
Huh.
Because the ultimate duality that we are now transcending is time itself. The past and the future never exist. We only live in the now. We never experience the past and we never experience the future. We're only experiencing, it's like stepping in a river. You know, the water basically hits your leg, and the water that hit your leg is not the same water that would hit it in 10 minutes, but you're still feeling the now, right? It's the now. You're never experiencing anything other than now. So when you finally transcend and choose love over judgment is when you start to experience the multinodal nature of time, right? That it's a Mobius strip. That what we believe is our distant future is likewise our distant past. And it must be so. So as we move higher and higher into this love versus judgment, that's when we start getting 24-strand DNA. That's when we start experiencing extrasensory perceptions that are very, very high vibrational. You know, we no longer have only 5 senses and then 1 extrasensory perception. We end up with 36 total senses. It's 6 squared. And it's all in the subtle realms. It's not only clairaudience and clairsentience and clairvoyance, right, which is the sight. It's clairtouch. It's clairtaste. It's clairsmell. We are moving now to this next level of transcendence. And as we do, it all happens as we can leave behind this attachment we have to being right. And this is Christ consciousness, because it's exactly what Jesus Christ taught. He wasn't trying to say, I'm the only one who can do this. In fact, he said the opposite. He's like, all you guys can do this. And by the way, you know, it's been said that you should hate your enemy. Take an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth in the Mosaic law. But I say unto you, when, you know, an enemy does something against you, love your enemy. When he smacks you, turn the other cheek. This is exactly what he was saying, and I'm paraphrasing it. But that's the whole point. Jesus taught, you know, 2 major concepts, and I would put the 2 of them, because I don't see this as a universe, but rather a U-inverse. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. That's 1. Because loving yourself is loving all. Because really the things that you're judging in the world around you are the things you don't like about yourself. And you want to deflect as you push it out of you. And as soon as you push it out of you, it just pops up in the world around you. So for me, the last bastion of my judgments has been, okay, like you, I used to say, okay, no, but I have discernment. I'm here to learn to be a good judge in this world. And, and we think that Solomon cutting the baby in two is a good solution, right? I mean, it sort of solved a problem, even though, well, let's be real, it's not really a solution.
It's horrific.
It seems like why? Because what he showed by saying, no, let's cut the baby in two, and then both sides, no, we don't want to kill the baby. That's stupid, right? So it brings them back to choosing love in a way, right? But what we all go through inevitably is we just don't see how the last bastion of those judgments we have are just showing up in the world around us. So for example, let's say that I want to take on a cause. Like I'm going to fight against, and I'm triggered by something, right? So I want to fight against Japanese fishermen, basically harvesting whales. What will happen is the more I go out and try to fight that thing, the more I will experience of that thing. My world will become inundated by Japanese fishermen harvesting whales everywhere. It's a matrix of mind. So now what I'm telling you is your actions to solve a problem by being an activist are actually creating more of that thing in your world.
It's been really present in the American diet as well. They say the more we've started obsessing about our diet, the worse it seems to be getting when it comes to food.
The things that you fight, the things you resist will inevitably persist until you finally accept the thing that you want to avoid. It's the same thing about our own personality traits. Until we finally accept the thing that we want to avoid existing inside of us. And so we say, no, I'm not that. That's why the name of God is I am that. It's to recognize that it's such an open-ended thing. I am that. I am. It's the recognition that everything you see is you. It's not separate from you. So, when you get triggered by someone, I used to get triggered by Donald Trump. And so I started saying to myself, okay, as soon as I want to judge him, I should just say, I am that I am out loud. And I forced myself to do it because then people would be like, why did you just say I am that I am, Robert? I'm like, because the thing I was about to say I didn't like about Donald Trump is the thing I don't like about myself. And I want to remind myself of that, to break myself of it. So, last year I would be like, okay, I get the whole non-duality thing and non-judgment thing, but I draw the line at pedophilia. I draw the line at murdering babies. My entire life, I never saw so much pedophilia shit as I saw in the last year and a half, 2 years. And now we are confronted every day by children being killed on the streets of Gaza or Rafah now. Is it just coincidence? Or is this me being and judging and creating the activism that is reflecting back to me as the thing I want to fight? Is my resistance causing the persistence? And when you understand that we are actually in a matrix of our own mind, our own creation, we are the actor, the playwright, the director, the producer. We're even the stage. Then you start realizing, wait a minute, am I the one creating this? And then I ask myself, not why did this happen to me, but why am I choosing this? So I'm not trying to say condone the acts of violence against children in any way, shape, or form. I'm telling you that I have judged it harshly. And now I live in a world that is full of it because of that harsh judgment. You get my point?
Absolutely. You've individuated it with your judgment, and then now it starts to emerge more and more. Like you said before, as you start to push it down, it starts to pop up in all the other spaces, even more and more around you, so that you can identify what you've been suppressing over here internally. Touch wood.
Love True love knows not condition. And that's what we're here to learn. We're here to learn true love.
It reminds me a little bit of
true love means that we have to learn acceptance of it too.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of that Scandinavian experiment where they stopped putting people in prison but putting them all into therapy. And they watched their crime rates just basically plummet with the awareness that, hurt people do hurt things, basically. And if we can learn to heal the hurt things start to dissipate as well.
Well, what probably happened as well is by making that choice, they stopped judging what it means to be a criminal in the same way. So they kind of, in a way, from a perceptual perspective, decriminalized the concept of being a criminal. So by decriminalizing it in perceptual terms, then you don't have society judging it so badly and recreating it all over the place. See what I mean? I mean, look, I know plenty of cops who were probably in high school and most of them didn't go to college. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I know plenty of cops that were this far away from being a criminal. Why did they choose to be a cop? Well, because maybe this exact concept. They wanted nothing to do with their criminal side because they knew they had the temptation. I am not afraid of people with darkness within them. I'm only concerned about people that believe they have no darkness within them. All of us have an equal amount of darkness and light. Some of us are aware of the darkness and some of us completely are avoidant of it. Those that are avoidant of it just push it into the world all around them, and then they become a hammer seeking the nail.
Wow. Robert, this conversation has been so deep and so profound, and yet we're just scratching the surface in so many different ways. There are so many things I still want to talk to you about, the Anunnaki, the Arcturians.
You can ask me another question if you like.
And another question if I like would be, I'm fascinated a little bit by the chemistry. You mentioned, feeling into your work around, this is going to be a big one for you to unpack, but not a big question, but I'm going to talk for a sec. There's light. Darkness is not the absence of light, and I'll let you fill in the blank there, because hydrogen is always present, and hydrogen has its own light, and then we're living in a carbon-based reality, as indicated in some ways by the color of our sun. And then actually, that as we raise our awareness, we're actually at the tipping point of a silica-based reality emerging. Wow. That is one of the questions I really wanted to ask, and I was like, maybe that's going to have to be for another podcast and the other time we've got one. You said ask a question, so I'm conscious it's a big one.
No, that's fine. We can do it.
Thank you, brother.
I'm down. I'm totally down for this. So, okay, so let me pull this up for you because this is best to show an illustration, I think. All right, so it's actually very much in line with what we were just talking about. So, can you see this whole picture of the X and 1 over X guy?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we're all divisions of 1. The universal equation. Well, so your X, you have a number, and your experience, your time space, your space time, your everything is 1 over X. And it's entirely unique to you. So we all have our own numerical identification, which is really our karmic path and everything wrapped into 1. And when we look at the 1 over X value of a large prime number, it's going to have a gigantic period, which has a repetition pattern within it. Just like 1 over 7 is 0.142855714. And as we look at the number 7, it can be represented as 7 and 1 over 7 because 1 is inherent to that. So what does that even mean? Well, it means that we have both wave and particle embedded within the number system. Follow what I'm saying? Think about this for a moment, okay? That's kind of a deep thought, right? That's deep. Because what now I can tell you is that wave and particle exist at the same time and always will. So if your number is 7, then this is the wave of potential of 7. And this will be your karmic cycle. Right? So 0.142857 and then 142857 is repeating infinitely in this. So it doesn't matter. And you'll also notice that there's always completion within it, like each lifetime. So each one of these cycles on a macro scale would be like a reincarnation process. Because what's the number of completion? It's 9. And with prime numbers, I discovered that every single prime number has a reciprocal period. You're an engineer, has a reciprocal period that is summing to 9. So 1 plus 4 plus 2 plus 8 plus 5 plus 7 equals 27. And 2 plus 7 equals 9.
Whoa.
Now, okay, so let's see if we have another number like this. So the next prime number up, so it doesn't work for 5, 3, or 2, but every other prime it does. So let's take 1 over 11, the next prime number. Well, the period is 09. That sums to 9.
This reminds me of the Om symbol a little bit, because the Om symbol's got the 3 and the 6 and the 9 in it too, right?
Yep, it does. So you've got 0769230. That's the period. And then 0769230. We add 7 plus 6 plus 9 plus 2 plus 3 equals 27. 9. And you could do this on Wolfram Alpha or on our polymath calculator, which is coming out very soon now. And you could take any prime number and it will always do this without exception.
But you said 5, 3, and 2 not.
5, 3, and 2 not, because they are primordial. They act different.
Yeah. That's
so 1 over 5.
This is interesting, and that's also interesting. I could play this game with you all day.
Yeah, so this will trip you out. You ever looked at the shape of the number 2 versus the number 5? The way we draw the number 2 and the way we draw the number 5, they're mirrored opposites of each other. Wait, is that just a coincidence that someone came to? Because 1 over 5 equals 0.2. It is the mirror. Right? So that's trippy. So what about 1 over 4? Because 4 has a similar shape to 7 also. So let's take 1 over 4. It's 0.25, but 2 plus 5 equals 7. You see what I'm saying?
I do. So
electromagnetism and gravity are embedded within 1,2,4,8,7,5, 1,2,4,8,7,5. Why that? Because that 1 doubles to 2, right? So 1 doubles to 2, 2 doubles to 4, 4 doubles to 8, 8 doubles to 16, and 1 plus 6 equals 7. So it becomes a pattern of 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5 forever. And 1, 4, and 7 is related to gravity, and 2, 5, and 8 is related to electromagnetism. And it turns out that 258.3 is the quantum Hall effect. And 2.58.3 or 2.583 squared equals the gravitational constant. So wait, quantum Hall effect squared equals gravity? Yeah. Electromagnetism squared equals gravity? Really? That's pretty funny, right? Because look, the gravitational constant is 6.67408. That's the codata. There's your 2.583. That's a trip. So how did that happen? We think that gravity and electromagnetism are totally separate. Well, I'll show you something else that'll trip you out just for fun. If I were to take the speed of light, now Einstein always referred to the speed of light as 3. How can it be 3? Why is it 3? No way that it's 3, right? Well, let me show you how it is. And it's exactly 3. Not because of the 299,792,458, but it's exactly 3 because of an entirely different reason. And that entirely different reason relates to this. So if you look at the speed of light, so let's just do an exercise on a calculator this is a little fun exercise. So have you ever done a compass conversion?
No.
Compass to decimal conversion. If this doesn't prove to you there's a God, I don't know what could. And it's just you, by the way.
It's all you.
Okay, here we go. It's all you. There is nothing else. It's all you. Okay, so this is the degrees. So if I click on this is going to give me this calculator that is a calculator at satsig.net. And satsig.net is giving me this calculator of degrees and seconds and all that stuff. And hopefully you could see the top part of this.
Yep, can do.
Now. Okay. All right. So if I put in here 333 degrees, 33.3 minutes, and 33 seconds, it's going to give me an interesting number. Okay. So basically you've got 3335641. Okay. Now let's take this number and see what happens when we find its reciprocal value. So go back to the calculator. Here we go. So now I'm going to put this number in here. Okay, and take a reciprocal value.
That's basically 1.003.
That's the speed of light. What? Look up the speed of light. 299,792. It's the speed of light. And 4.5, and if I did the whole thing, I'll show you what it comes out to. So 299,792,458, right? Its reciprocal is 333,5641.
Of course it is. Now it's like, of course it is.
So wait a minute. The speed of light can be depicted as 1 over 333 degrees, 33.3 minutes, and 33 seconds exactly? That doesn't blow your mind?
It totally does. And it's all decoded within the 3, as you said, and that's what you referred to it as.
That's right. But wait, there's more. You're going to love this. This is all new stuff I just found. So if I take that 333, let's just bring it forward here a little bit so it's a little closer in. Okay. So now if I take this and I double this value, wait a minute. That number is strangely close to the gravitational constant. Are you kidding me? So wait, and gravity is posited to be the opposite condition of light. So you asked me the question, darkness is not, finish the sentence, you said. Darkness is not the absence of light, rather it is the absorbed condition of light. So let's take this a bit further.
Like that is...
What's that?
That's spiritually so empowering as well. I just have to sort of pepper that in there.
Yeah, it's deep, right? There's some super deep stuff there. So wait a minute. If light is 333, and then we were going to subtract it, so 0.333 from 1, then darkness has to be 0.667. That's gravity. What? That's a trip.
It totally is. It's also not lost on me that gravity is also has this relationship with density as well, and then you've got the speed of light, which has this sort of uplifting connotation about it as well.
Well, given that you're going there, since you're raising this,
Robert, you're just teeing him
just
up.
saying.
I'm hitting him out of the park because you're just teeing him up.
Yeah, just given that you're going there, this is gonna kind of tip you out, dude. So here we go. I've not shared any of this with people yet, so might as well. And so here we go. Since you teed me up so nicely. So here's a concept, right, of this. Here we go. So 1 over mass is magnetism, 1 over electricity is time, 1 over gravity, radiation, photon, and phonon, sound and light.
Huh.
About a year ago, I found that there was a way to factorize triangles, that every triangle has within it an X and Y, a male and female relationship, and that the hypotenuse of a right triangle would be the arithmetic mean of X and Y. That the height of a right triangle, and this is always true, will always be the geometric mean. And geometric mean is defined as X times Y taken to the power of 1/2. And the arithmetic mean is X plus Y multiplied by 1/2. So nature is constantly doing both exercises, both equations. And the base value of that right triangle will be Y minus X multiplied by 1/2. So I then took it a step further and found that if I place this right triangle within another right triangle of same proportion, same beta and theta values, right, which would be the angular references internal to the internal angles of the right triangle, then you could find the harmonic mean, which is effectively, if I had a 5, 12, 13 triangle, this becomes the height squared divided by the hypotenuse. Remember, the height was defined as the geometric mean squared divided by the arithmetic mean equals the harmonic mean. So I'll just say that one more time. The geometric mean, which is X times Y, and in this case, it's 18 and 8.
Yep, that's what you had.
So X times Y equals 144. Right? Are you seeing this?
Yeah. Yep.
144, right, is basically taking that. So that's the 144, which is 12 squared, right, divided by the arithmetic mean of 8 plus 18, which is 26, divided by 2 equals 13. So then the harmonic mean is just that relationship.
Right.
And the quadratic mean is also likewise a similar relationship, but in this case, it's the hypotenuse, which would be the arithmetic mean, divided by the geometric mean, is giving me the quadratic mean. But guess what I found? This relationship is actually giving us exactly the relationship of E equals MC squared.
Huh?
Look. You've got C as your hypotenuse value. The only thing that was the flex that we had to understand was that the height is actually 1 over mass.
1 over.
So the height of the right triangle, remember, all inverse square law for radiation and gravity always works with right triangles, always. So it must be related to the right triangle. But look, so now if I take 1 over mass and I multiply it by C squared, that's going to give me exactly the energy value. Energy is just the quadratic mean. So that means that there are two fundamental forces at play that are just ratio based.
Oh, man.
And what I would call a realm of forms from a mental matrix.
I'm also tripping into the E equals MC squared, the energy and the light relationship, and back to Einstein saying 3 and then triangles and light. Sorry, I'm just right in there with you, bro.
Yes, it's this right here. We have one thought, and here's the relationship. The sum is the two hypotenuse values of an isosceles. The product, square root, is the height, and the difference is the base. And so then the two factors become the length of this x-ascribed circle. Diameter is the value of x, and the other factor is y, which is the vesica created within it, right here. So this relationship is defining for us then the quaternity of one thought, which is we go from first dimension of ratio of imbalance between masculine and feminine. It's because of the imbalance, and we created the imbalance so that we could perceive the duality. Then we turn it into art. It starts to take on form and become second dimension. We measure that with area. Then we give it depth. Right? And so then it gets a resonance. And then we put it in motion. And the motion basically turns it into logarithmic spirality. And so then everything is off of this. The periodic elements. It's all based on right triangles. Any matrix will always be made off second dimensional Euclidean plane, basic geometry of right triangles, that then are compressions of all higher dimensional geometric polytopes. Because the right triangle fits everything, it can fit any void space. That's the value of it. So what this means then is we can now take this to another level, which is that we go to the form that I wanted to show you originally, which is showing us that the relationship between E equals MC squared is something altogether simplified. And it's just embedded within these relationship nodal points. And spirituality and science are one. So basically, the quadratic mean is just energy, and 1 over that value is time. The speed of light and gravity are just related to the same hypotenuse value. And the height is 1 over mass and magnetism. And it's the geometric mean, the arithmetic mean, and the quadratic mean. It's the relationship of logarithmicity. That's why E equals MC squared. So we're now in a different zone, right, of a new way of looking at the world, because now we can see how the world organizes itself, and it's beautiful. And so in the context of that organization, we can now go back and answer the question that you asked, that was basically, is light the absence of dark, or is it simply the opposite condition of it? And what I'm telling you, it's the opposite condition of it. It's just absorption versus reflection. You know this from physics. As an engineer, you would know that the color of my white shirt is just reflecting white.
Everything else is absorbed.
Exactly. So where does it go? It has to have a thing. It has to exist somewhere, right? So when you start looking at spectral analysis, you can look at reflection spectra, you can look at absorption spectral analysis. And when we look at reflection and absorption, then you start realizing, wait a minute, all of the things that I believe that I am absorbing are just being reflected back to me in my world, and that's my U inverse.
Is it weird that you make science poetry?
I think it's what we're supposed to do.
I guess it's a bit of a compliment, but it's still.
I think it's what ultimately this is how God remembers his creation or her creation. Right. And what's interesting about this is it's all inside of the Bohr atom model in physics. We already know this. This is not like rocket science. The Bohr atom model is this equation right here. It's literally a reciprocal relationship. It's lambda and 1 over lambda. The Bohr atom model was able to accurately predict the exact frequency and reflection spectra of hydrogen, which are these nanometers of light here. You know, the 400 or 396 or whatever, and then all the way up. This is one visible spectrum, which is actually 720 nanometers down to 360. It's a doubling of an octave. It's the same thing. Or it's the other way around, because we think about how we want to think about it, but it's wavelength, right? But we could do the same thing with angstroms. It doesn't matter. And so when we look at outer space to find deposits of hydrogen, we look to see if these exact wavelengths of light show up in clusters. And when they do, we know that hydrogen is in outer space. But by the same token, if I'm the hydrogen and I'm looking at the rest of the universe around me, everything that is not the same hydrogen is everything that I'm absorbing. This is the absorption spectra. You get my point?
Totally.
So light is not, you know, we think that, okay, because we all have this example. We walk into a room, it's a dark room, and we turn on a light. Okay, everything is enlightened now, right? No, all that's really happening when you do that, all the molecules, all of the elements, the atoms that are in the room are already being absorbed and reflected according to their properties. The only thing that you do by turning on a light is magnify the reflection and the absorption that was already inherent to the room. So in this context, darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is the absorbed condition of it. So therefore, it's not such a bad thing after all. My shirt cannot be white without it also being absorbing every other color. Right? It's reflecting every color, right? And it's absorbing, you know, no colors. It's reflecting everything. Or the black shirt that I wear tomorrow is basically, you know, reflecting no color and absorbing all color. Again, it's no different than what the example I gave for Kundalini between judgment and love, light and dark. One doesn't exist without the other. So why judge negatively the darkness or be afraid of it? There's no need to be. One cannot exist without the other. Light needs dark and dark needs light. It's yin yang. And when we start realizing the actual nature of it all, then we no longer judge it, and then we can transcend it, choose love over being right, and now start to experience time in its true nature, which is unity. Because then now we're not perceiving in the same way. We know that the duality exists, but we understand the rationale behind it. I'll leave you one thought that I think is an interesting one for you, especially given your background. So if I were to take the square root of 2, which is the essence of duality. So duality is we start with a circle. The circle gets divided into 2, and we call that duality, right? And we can make it light and we can make it dark. And at the center of it is the fine structure constant, because that's a separation between light and dark. We are at a black hole and a white hole. We are that. We're perceiving the world around us from the perception of what we are. So we'll be literally at a consciousness bubble. The black hole, white hole separation is literally our conscious mind separated from the unconscious mind.
I'm thinking about Yoda and the never underestimate the dark side.
Yeah, never underestimate the dark side, right? So the dark side has properties that are critically important too. So again, it's not that people that have darkness are bad. It's people that believe they have no darkness that do all the bad shit, that really do the bad stuff, because they're not integrated. So if we take the number 2, and we all can associate duality with that. But all of the musical scale, which is all existence, is based off the square root of 2. The center of the logarithmic scale of an octave would be, the square root of 8 divided into 2 is going to give us the square root of 2. So literally the center of a scale is a diminished fifth, and that is unison note multiplied by the square root of 2. That's exactly the value of it. Doesn't matter what unison note value you start with. So all duality is founded on the square root of 2. Every note has it embedded within it. So our note way of cutting up the scale until we go into precise temperament tuning, which is what you can find a lot of stuff on that I developed and brought, as a download. The square root of 2 is effectively the foundation of all musical notes, because the 1/12th root of 2 is the first note. The second 12th root of 2 is the third note. The third 12th root of 2 is the fourth note. It just keeps going up until you finish the whole scale. And it's a cookie cutter approach that we have for it. But the foundational basis of it, the separation of that circle right down the middle, is a square root of 2. And it's the essence of duality. It's infinite. If I wanted to find your spirit, I would take the square root of you. And that's your infinite nature. It's your essence. I can multiply. I don't need any other information. It's so efficient. I can multiply that number by itself, and that is effectively creating a compression of your collapsed form. It's no longer infinite. Now it is a collapsed form. It's the number 2. Every conversation that's ever existed, every conversation that will ever yet exist, can be found inside the infinite non-repetitive pattern, no patterns repeating, inside the square root of 2. So the number 2 is a compression for an infinite amount of information. It's a very efficient compression. So let's say I take the square root of 2, and now I know that that's the essence of duality. So let me add it to the essence of divinity, which is what we think of as 3, the triangle, Father, Mother, Son, right? So let's take the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. Whoa, that's a trip. That's kind of really close to pi. So wait a minute. So we start with a line that's a diameter of a circle, and then we have a circle that goes around that line, and the value of the diameter is 1, and the circumference of that line is the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. That's pretty cool. Isn't that beautiful?
It really is.
So, but wait, there's a bigger metaphorical meaning, which is the square root of 2 feels like duality and suffering. And even the symbol for the square root of 2 looks like the symbol for Saturn, which represents lead in alchemy. So the square root of 2 is like suffering. And until we realize the divine nature of the square root of 3 and its relationship to complete the circle with the square root of 2, then we can just feel like suffering for suffering's sake. It's like learning math with no meaning. Math with no meaning sucks. Math with meaning is divine communication. Suffering with the context of this is actually advancing us. Why did I choose this? Is actually advancing me towards my goal of soul evolution and turning me into the divine nature that I always have been and just forgot because I put myself in the game. So now when we do this, we can look and see, okay, well, what number of degrees of this circle would represent the square root of 2 component of that suffering? Now that we know that the divine nature completes the circle, right? So now we're going to take this and divide it by the square root of 2. And then take its reciprocal. And then to find the number of degrees, we take that and multiply it by 360 degrees. So this is how much of the circle is suffering when the context is divine in degrees. Look at that. 1, 6, 1, 8, 1, 6. That's like this perfect balance of the golden ratio. 1618 is the golden ratio, but its reciprocal is 618. I said that earlier, that the golden ratio minus 1 is equal to 1 over the golden ratio. And just like the golden ratio squared is equal to the golden ratio plus 1. It's the only number that does this. So wait a minute. The lead of the square root of 2 of suffering, when we have the context of the divine aspect of what it's doing to actually take us through our soul evolution, becomes the golden ratio?
Pain has purpose.
So, pain has purpose. And just as my friend Richard Rudd, the writer of Gene Keys.
Yeah, he's such a legend. Mutual friend, what a G.
Right? Is that, you know, he calls awakening a series of softening.
I love that.
That I then extended to say it's a series of softenings that turns pain into purpose and lead of suffering into gold of soul evolution. Once we understand the context of why we're here, we're not blaming other people anymore. The only doorway into higher scientific knowledge is through the doorway of spirituality. Everyone who ever brought forward new knowledge to earth did it through spirituality. Look at Kepler, look at Rene Descartes, look at Da Vinci, look at Plato, look at Pythagoras, look at all these people that we've taken for granted, that we throw out all of their esoteric teachings and studies that actually got them the knowledge because we said, oh, that shit's weird. Cambridge University sells all the alchemical works of Isaac Newton, for example. He got to his knowledge about gravity because of his depth of understanding of the Great Pyramid and the Royal Egyptian Cubit and how that was the Euler number minus 1. It's hidden so that it can be found. It's not hidden so that it will never be found. Nobody hides something so that it will never be found. You hide it like you make an encryption so that it can be read and experienced by the person intended to get it. And we are that. And I am that. I am. This is the experience that we're living, and we're here to learn love, to move that meter up our spine so that the balance shifts towards love and acceptance rather than judgment and being right.
Hey, your Inspired Tribe. I want to take a quick sec. I wanted to share something today with you that is really dear to my heart, and it's actually what keeps the entire ecosystem around the Inspired Evolution thriving, my one-on-one coaching. So it's basically coaching that helps you live a spiritually aligned life. I coach people from all different types of walks of life. These people are leaders and they're looking to have an incredible spiritual impact in the lives that they're leading for themselves and then also lead in alignment to their values. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a few people that have also transformed through my coaching, and here's what they have to say.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing.
Then my corporate banking job wasn't really doing it.
You feel like you're not making progress towards your goals.
And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate because you won't be disappointed.
As you guys can see, there's a lot of people all over the world from all these different corners experiencing incredible transformations. I don't think, if I can say humbly myself, that there is anything quite like this somewhere else online. Most people that, have channels that, grow and grow and grow don't really focus on one-to-one offerings. I have just found that it is the most profound space where you can bring yourself in a private container and really just share what's going on for yourself. And if you want to book in for that call with me, touch base, it's www.amrit.coach/life. That's www.amrit.coach/life. www.coach.com/LIFE. There is a link in the show notes below to book in that call. And yeah, if you want to take your journey further, if you want to dive in deeper, and you really want to live a spiritually aligned life, if it's for you, please do check it out. And without too much further ado, once again, for your spirit, for yourself, today's podcast.
Robert, I'm an engineer turned life coach, and everything I do is trying to help people realize that their biggest challenge, unlocks their biggest gift. And I feel like today, where we've landed in this particular conversation is just a mathematical ode, which just pays complete tribute to helping people unlock their infinite potential and understanding of, well, even deeper than that, that they're not only going along on a sacred journey, but that they're actually never alone, that it's actually all destined in some way. But then also I love the way you phrase destiny is the free will of your soul. It chose
of your higher self, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And just that you're always supported, you're always there. Even that, light and the absence of light is not the absence of light, it's just the absorption of light. There is always light. We're just in this medium of having this experience. And brother, I'm leaving this conversation with this deep fascination with this 1/X at the very least. So much I'm walking away with, but I feel like I totally get your logo being the Mobius strips inverted in on themselves and then LinkedIn and trying to and that time going forwards and backwards. And I'm like, well, I could just stare at this logo forever and try and decode the secrets of the universe and time. But the 1/X is what I'm leaving this conversation with, which is just, yeah.
I only found out recently why I chose, because it should have been, if you follow alchemy, the bottom, at first it started out as triangles, and then one day I woke up, I'm like, no, we need to cut the corners off the triangles and make diamonds. And I got that download back in, I think it was 2019 or 2020. And I was like, okay, but it still needs to be that the bottom triangle was going to be blue instead of red. And everyone always asks me, why did you choose that? That's the male position, so it should be red. And the triangle that's inverted, that's pointing down, should be blue. And I only realized why it was what I chose. Because actually, this is the ancient alchemical symbol, I didn't even know it, for Orion. So think about this, and it's on the pyramid wall. It's what Dolores Cannon was talking about. And it's right over the bull that's right below the symbol, the face of Orion on the wall, which is a super trip because when you look at the star colors of Orion, so you've got Betelgeuse, which is a red star, and you've got Rigel, which is a blue star. So it's literally matching the same color relationship that I had on this logo without even realizing any of this. This is when, you start finding the encryptions that are left by your higher self to the conscious mind, and it's this divine hand of providence. And right now it's 4:32 here in time.
I'm resonating with it.
You don't even realize the things you left yourself through time and experience. And you can't realize it. It's so beautiful. And every time you do, it brings back this majesty moment, It's so epic. It's wow. It blows my mind, right? And actually, this is the first, I have the drawing right here of it just magically popped up.
Magically.
Yep.
As we're talking about providence.
This was the original time I drew the logo, right? That was in 2020. Yeah. And I didn't even know that it was on the wall.
Yeah,
I had no idea it was on the wall.
That blows me away. Especially
until much later, and then...
Especially paired with the Dolores Cannon piece where she prophesies someone will decode it.
Oh, yeah. It's so crazy cool, right? And epic. It's what the heck?
Sorry. I can see
You see this?
Yeah, I saw it without you even having the highlighted section below.
And the inverted lines, too.
Yep, I can see.
And this one's dark and this one's light.
Mm-hmm.
And there's writing on here, too. And here's the bull's horns.
Oh yeah.
So I had no idea. And it's Orion. It's Orion. And what's really interesting also is that it shows up, on the wall right next to Orion.
And also, isn't your sun sign the bull as well?
It is not just the bull; it's Orion. My birthday's this week. This week in Vedic which is sidereal, which is what we're actually in. It's May 16th. It's the Orion constellation. It's actually Orion. And it's the 137th day. And a circle with a circumference or a diameter of 137 has a circumference of 432. It's all interrelated.
Random little question.
You just don't even realize.
Yeah, one random little question to tuck in there. When you start seeing the bull and you start seeing the symbol and you start seeing Orion and you start seeing yourself as the toroid and then also the Orion, and then you look back at your yesteryear life, pharmacy CEO and all this sort of stuff, pharmaceutical CEO and all this sort of stuff, I imagine there's a lot of push energy in those back in the day. And then you come to this juncture where is it an invitation to surrender and flow more? When you see these greater forces at play, and it's just like,
I mean, look, when I started seeing stuff like this,
we're going where we're going. Sorry, yeah.
I mean, when I started seeing stuff like this, I spent so much time analyzing Metatron's cube. Right? This is my birth chart. Right? My natal chart is freaking Star of David, man. It's like Metatron's cube. I mean, what a trip. So yeah, I started just going, okay, we're all meant to find our own and remember why we chose what we chose. There are no mistakes. None whatsoever. We're only learning. And as we learn to fall in love with ourselves and start to learn to fall in love with everyone else and everything else, that's when your world really changes and shifts. And then you can see, the picture of who you are and why you chose what you chose. And that is the purpose of life, I believe. That we are here to transcend all these things that we didn't know about ourselves, right? Or that we didn't care to know about ourselves. And we maybe repressed out of ourselves and started to pin it on everybody else and blame everyone else, when actually it's just us. It's literally just us. And it's the most beautiful thing that we can recognize and know and find. And so it's hidden through time. And, it's whether or not you see it is just coming down to where you are in your process. You may not see it all at once. You may have to wait a while, right? Like this. I mean, I didn't see this image on the wall until much later. Like this was only discovered a while ago.
Well, even today,
like on my last trip,
you saw something on the sarcophagus that you've never seen before.
Yeah, on the side of the sarcophagus. So I'm seeing new stuff all the time. So when you look at this, you can see there's the face right here. Here's a pupil. Here's the other pupil. Here's the eyebrow. Right? It's actually a bird over it. The bird is also Lyra.
Yeah.
Here's the nose bridge. Here's the nostril. Here's the lips right here. Coming down like this. So now if I get rid of this face on the side, you can still see it. Mm-hmm. It's like, and it's right on top of the bull. Here's the bull. Here's the cow that's Hathor, and it's right over his throat. So this is that logo as well. It's all about Orion. It's the hero's journey. And we're just going through this zodiac. It's a 24,000 year cycle. And that 24,000 year cycle is taking us through all of this. Yeah, it's like a yuga cycle. And it's taking us through the pole shifts, and the room shape and everything is associated directly with it. It's the reason why the shape of the room of the King's Chamber is what it is because it's related directly to this. So we have 4 North Stars: Polaris, But 6,000 years ago, it was Thuban. And 6,000 years ago, the North Star was Vega. And 6,000 years ago, and this is mainstream science stuff, 6,000 years before that, it was Deneb. And this is the exact shape of the King's Chamber, 2-to-1 rectangle. So this is the cycle. We think it's a steady Earth's wobble. We don't know that. It could be fast and dramatic for all we know. So, that becomes this relationship that we could start to perceive, which is even the Orion constellation is also the same shape as like the King's Chamber. It's just if I inscribe a circle within it and then exascribe a circle, it will inform these 2 points, and these will go in the bottom, and then this belt stars inform the sarcophagus. The original position was right in the middle of the room.
In that orientation?
Yep, in that orientation. So this is what it really looked like, I believe.
Wow.
So it's a story of Orion going through the hero's journey through the duat of reincarnation over and over and over again, until he finally learns how to fall in love with the world just as it is without conquering or changing it. We don't escape Earth by fighting it. We transcend the duat of duality by falling in love with it just as it is, because we recognize the soul evolution it's creating. We understand that it makes us divine.
Were these messages left for us to find on purpose, so as to awaken this way? Or was there another purpose? Because the sarcophagus implies that there's a body inside, but we never found one.
We assumed there was a body. There never was one. Anyone who's laid in the sarcophagus knows the thing is a resonance chamber. I mean, the speed of sound, the speed of light. I mean, imagine if we could speed up the speed of light by 17 and a half times. That would be like warp drive, right? Like super warp.
Hyper.
Well, we can speed up the speed of sound because sound travels faster through denser media. So in the air, sound is 343 meters per second, but in water, it's 1,440 meters per second. And in granite, which is what the King's Chamber is made of, it's 6,000 meters per second. It's a full 17 and a half times faster than the speed of sound through air. Speed of light seeks a vacuum to travel faster, right? The speed of sound, it's opposite. Its absorbed condition seeks denser media to travel through. So when you're in the King's Chamber, the room is resonance chamber. You feel it's literally like a sound chamber, cacophony. And it's there as a spiritual ascension stargate. The purpose of the Great Pyramid was not to make, energy so people could use iPhones back in those days. It was, I even got a thumbs up on that one. Jeez, that's funny. AI is pretty freaking smart. Maybe we should just start asking the AI to tell us what the pyramid is. So the Great Pyramid was there to awaken us through remembrance and then unlock for us the higher dimensional portals. That as we go there, and I just got a big directive yesterday to go and read Revelations 4. And Revelations 4 is super amazing because it basically is describing exactly what we see in the Great Pyramid. And the next chamber is the throat chakra chamber. And there's only, I've said it publicly many times, the only thing that I've seen inside there as I've astral traveled into there is the Metathrone. Metathrone is the throne of Metatron. And Metatron means throne. It's the sovereign throne. It's the throat chakra. The throat chakra is for the throne, and the throne is for the throat. It's when mankind becomes the priest king again, which is what Melchizedek was, a priest king, the combination of spirituality and science.
Melchizedek was Abraham's advisor.
Well, it was Abraham's prophet. Abraham paid tithes and offerings to Melchizedek. Melchizedek was just another incarnation of Metatron. You could say that Metatron is the higher self of Orion, and Orion is the avatar self, and we are all avatars of that. And my second season of Codex is called Metatron Revealed.
That's exciting.
So the whole thing is about this.
Yeah.
It's all about this. And meta just simply means beyond. And that's why it's a word that showed up in society all over the place, right? Like the company Facebook changed to Meta. Facebook is like a book of masks. And then it goes to Meta. And of course, we all don't love Facebook. So therefore, it must be an evil thing, right? Maybe it is. I don't know. But I don't judge it either way. It's okay. The darkness needs to be there. For the light to shine brightest. It's the nature of the world. You're not going to get rid of darkness by fighting it. You'll only create more and more of its perverse outcomes. There's no need to fight it. So I wrote this thing called the 24 Principles of Universal Mind. You can find it on my website. And it's in the blog section. And it explains like the instruction manual for this matrix life. And how we learn through opposites and how we chose it all. So no need being a victim. So all of this is a beautiful realization that we can all now fully experience. And that's what's coming to light. It's also why the changes in the world are happening. Because what's changing in the world around us is reflective of the changes happening within us. And the last bastions of those things that we judge are showing up as the dystopian aspect of society around us. Because everything has to remain in balance.
And we are on the cusp of a real shift and change towards something really new and different coming through.
Oh, yeah. We absolutely are. We absolutely are. I mean, we see this with this aurora borealis, right? These are ascension signs.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
And also probably an upcoming pole shift too.
Yeah, you reckon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think before we started the podcast, I was even referring to Pam Gregory referencing your work, and she was mentioning how many solar flares we've had recently and just the information packets that are coming through for Ascension at this particular time. And it's really, really inspiring. Really, really inspiring. And especially considering where we were like even just 50, 100 years ago in terms of getting one every decade, and now we've getting like one every 28 days. 28 in, how many? Like 28 in the last 30 days or something. That was really, really crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at this language that's in Revelations 4, which I literally just got this download on yesterday, right? After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, a portal. And the first voice which I heard was as it were a trumpet talking with me, which said, "Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter." And immediately I was led in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven. And one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and sardine stone. And there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. And round about the throne were 24 seats. So remember, the king's chamber is a 24,000-year cycle. So above the king's chamber is the throne in the throat chakra. The king's chamber is the heart chakra. Round about upon the seats, I saw 24 elders sitting. So 24 elders sitting. Each one would be an aeon for each of the ages, right? 1,000 years. Clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeded lightning and thundering and voices. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, with 7 chakras, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne, there was a sea of glass. And you know that the chambers of the Great Pyramid are all tied to the chakras. Before the throne, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, which would be, before the throne was the king's chamber. King's chamber is made of granite, which is 70% quartz crystal. And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. The 4 beasts being, the first beast was that of a lion. The second beast was a calf. The third beast was the face of a man. The fourth beast was a flying eagle. These are the 4 faces that are also described in the book of Ezekiel that were on the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant had the exact same proportional dimensions as the king's chamber sarcophagus. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings about him. They're seraphim. And they were full of eyes within. And they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. So representing Metatron, the seraphim. And when those beasts give glory and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne, who liveth forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne, and worship him that liveth forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they were and are created. So we're just finding the stuff we left for ourselves. The pyramid is just a reflection of what's happening with our consciousness. The shifts that are happening in the world around us are just a reflection of what's happening within us. It's the most exciting time ever to be alive.
With the stuff that's revealing and revelation that's coming through. Wow.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Oh, Robert.
And
thank you for your generosity. And seriously, I could thank you for your time and your energy and your presence here. And I totally want to and am sort of in an indirect way. But honestly, brother, thank you so much for being here, who you are, the way you're carrying the remembrance as well, and encouraging all of us to remember and remind us of who we truly are and our unique place in it all and the sovereign divinity within us all. And yeah, just the finding the cold hard facts in so many ways, and yet also just reminding us that those are just completely subjective and that really it's all about the heart and coming back to learning to love really at the center of it all. And just that reminder that you carry with such an esteemed intellectual prowess through your polymath, which I really love and admire, but then also just championing an even bigger heart behind it, brother. I'm so grateful for you. Yeah, thank you so much for your sharings and being. Really appreciate you, brother, man.
So good to see you, Amrit. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Wowee, what an incredible conversation ahead with Dr. Robert Edward Grant. We dive deep into so many incredible decodings into sacred geometry, the language of cosmology, and just, man, spiritual awakening from a really grounded mathematical perspective. He shares a lot of things he's never ever shared before. Also interesting tips on how to basically join him on a trip to Peru. So this is an incredible conversation. Open up your mind, open up your heart.